Alrighty, welcome back. We're going to make some hand stamps today, and I just kind of laid out the different things that we're going to need. The main thing to create the stamp is going to be some sort of like craft foam. You'll see some foam core, which is pretty easy to cut into and build up, as well as a piece of felt, which we're actually going to use as a stamp pad. So I wanted to show you that in case we don't have those handy. But if you do have them handy, you're more than welcome to use this. This is just going to increase your knowledge base off of that. So there should be a handout as well. The best way to get going is to put this aside. Is to grab your foam and figure out what you want to have raised. Now the main principle behind this is that this is a previously cut piece of craft foam that can be adhered onto another surface, but the thing to keep in mind is that whatever's highest is what's actually going to print. So there's a relief form of printmaking. And so what I can do with this, I'm just going to do a basic shape. Now let's see, let's just do a circle. And then I can either utilize my craft knife or I can cut with scissors. And there's my shape. Now I can continue to cut this up in a number of different ways. So I'll just put another shape on the inside there. The one thing to keep in mind is that it will be reversed. So if you happen to have a letter like a B or something along those lines, you want to make sure that you could draw it out face right, and then when you go to glue it down, you'll actually reverse it. From here, once you have your individual shapes, you can use the straight PVA. And I'm just going to glue this towards one edge of my foam core there. And I want to make sure that I had put the adhesive onto the surface fairly well. And I'll make sure that that's pressed on there pretty well. Now the important thing is to let this dry for at least a couple of hours, if not overnight. That ensures that the adhesive is going to stick well to the foam core. And then once this is dry, you can actually come back at this and cut the shape out. Now you could have straight edges, or you could mimic the shape of the item in which you're the stamp you're creating. But you'll see that it cuts really easily. You may have to go over those lines several times to get it to release. You can see that will release it. One thing that you can do, this is an optional item, is that here's a pre-cut stamp. On the back side, I actually put another piece of foam core on there, and I just glued that on with the PVA because it gave me a little handle to actually stamp. So that's very helpful. And you can see the outside edges, as long as it is lower than, and it won't come in contact with the stamp pad, it shouldn't create an impression. So I have several other things to keep to work with today. Other things to keep in mind, so you can see some other ones I've already created, is that we have these plastic erasers. Many of us do at home and whatnot, and these are actually wonderful to carve into. Once again, you could just draw it out like I did before, and you could use a craft knife to actually chisel that out. And so you can get a variety of different shapes, and we'll see what that looks like. I mean, if you need something a little bit longer, you can do it on the end there. But technically, you could do it on any available surface. So it's something to keep in mind. Let's move on to making this stamp pad. And for this, I'm going to get some of my items out of the way, because I already have some things to work with. You're going to need a plate or some sort of container to lay the felt in. Now what I like to do is to have a little bit of water, and I'll actually just submerge this in the water to get it damp. And I'm wringing the water out, because what this will do is it'll help disperse the pigment a little more evenly. Now in order to get a nice dark impression, you're going to have to use more pigment. And so now that this is all damp, I am going to leave it so it's folded over, you can see that. And I'm just going to lay that inside this tray here. And from there, you can actually utilize your glue brush if that's helpful and easy to access. And I'm going to choose this blue color. So I'll bring this over here. And what I can do is just start painting the stamp pad. And like I said, the darker you go, the stronger the impression. Now that I have that painted on, that should be enough to create some sort of impression. Now you can actually mix the colors on top of there as well. In fact, maybe I'll just go ahead and do that for another portion. I'll put a little yellow to the side so you can at least see how that may mix together to form a different color. Something to keep in mind. Then from here, what we can do is we can just take our stamp pad, and our stamps that we have here. I'm just going to go ahead and take this apple, and you want to push down, make sure that that is actually picking up some pigment. I just have some newsprint laying around, and so once I have this on here, and you can tamp that on top, and then I can lay this on top and give it a nice firm press all around. Let's see what we got. A little faint, but it is showing up. So let's say we're going to go a little bit darker. And that's a little bit better. So you can go a little bit darker with that as well. Another thing that you can play around with is actually getting your watercolor, and you can paint directly onto the surface of the stamp. Those lay on top of there. And that's going to be a lot stronger. You just let that dry. Nice thing is, once this is all complete, you can just rinse this off with water. I would not soak it in water because it may cause that stamp portion to release from the base. But when you are done, you can actually just wash out this felt, and then you can reuse it again another time. You'd of course want to let it dry before you store it. But the nice thing about the watercolors is that they are non-toxic, and so you can use plates at home, whatever you have available to actually rest that stamp pad in. So hopefully that makes sense, and you can have fun with that. But thinking about surface treatments on any of your projects. But the thing I like about all these stamps is that it builds a beautiful visual vocabulary of repetitive shapes and forms that you may want to incorporate into some of your book structures. Enjoy! Here are what some of the other stamps look like. So you can use watered down acrylic paint as well. You just want to make sure that you don't let that dry onto the stamp pad, the piece of felt that you have. Otherwise you won't be able to use it again.